and he's a bright mind, brilliant, and anything, I think he has answers to almost any question. I'm going to introduce our board here. We've got Lenny Freeland. If you'd like to say a little bit about yourself, each person. And
you know, as you get older, you add a couple of things to your resume every year. And by the time you're 70, your resume is a short volume. So if you name a board, I chaired it or I created it. On down the list, I'm on the Colorado NORML board as a member emeritus. What else is of note in that field? Deeply involved in the legalization out here in Colorado. And now I'm letting these younger, smarter people carry the torch as I pass on whatever it is I think I am able to. I did, one of the ones I'm really proud of, I did manage to get the, and they didn't put up a fight, the Colorado State Bar Association to create a cannabis law committee, which has gotten across the board attention, not just from defense attorneys, but from real estate lawyers, etc. Pleasure to meet.
And then we have Chris, who is our Vice President of Colorado NORML.
Hi, Chris Chiari. Thanks for being here tonight. I yield and look forward to getting onto the program.
We have Marketing Director Julie Richardson with us.
Let me unmute myself. I'm kind of like Lenny. I'm one of those old dogs still in the fight. My background is from South Louisiana, fighting with education, housing, disaster assistance. And if there's a board, I sat on it, created it, or helped with it. But I dealt a lot in minority communities in South Louisiana, a lot of French-speaking communities. And have an interesting background, but when I was diagnosed with cancer and I also have epilepsy, I kind of felt reassigned in my advocacy and I came to Colorado and got involved. Now I yield.
All right, and now we have, let's see, did we lose John or is he still with us? And we have Ty, one of our newest board members.
Hi guys.
Hi.
It's Ty Lamb. I own Nature Med. I've been in the marijuana industry for like going on 12 years. So you're gonna see me pop in and out. Unfortunately, I'm at the shop by myself. Marcus is off, so hopefully you don't mind that I come in and out of this meeting.
And then we have Eddie, who is our outreach. Oh, Eddie, we can't hear you, bud. Yeah, Richard, if you'd like to. He is new and glad to have him. He's just here to kind of see what we have to talk about, and happy to invite him to the table. All right, so actually, did John actually get kicked off?
I think he dropped off. I'm waiting for him to come back in.
Oh, here he is. All right. While we're waiting, I guess we should mention our memberships.
Oh, there he is.
Members. Oh, there's John. Hi, John.
Something happened.
That's all right. That's technical difficulties always these days. You just got to roll with the flow.
All right.
So I would just like to start out a little bit about you telling us who you are as a person, and then what your organization is doing for the community and how you're bridging the gap between social equity and the cannabis community.
Well, first of all, Lenny and Rich, good to see some veterans on the call, old guys. So good to see some wiser veterans. One of the things that I've done is to accuse, and not necessarily accuse, but there are a number of young white folks in the industry. And what I've done is really engage them with a conversation that they are drinking from a well that they didn't dig. And so from a messenger perspective and a message perspective, then what I've tried to do is to bring the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative into the landscape because there was an obvious omission. Prior to 2019, there had been lip service given to social equity, but no real efforts, no real regulatory programs or policies. And so the mayor and a few others suggested that it may be good to bring my expertise because I'm coming from affirmative action, I'm coming from the war on drugs, I'm coming from disparity studies, I'm coming from diversity and inclusion activities. And so he felt that I might be helpful. And so it started off with engaging MIG in the city, and then it evolved to engaging Colorado Leads, and then basically the industry, the state, the media, to the conversation that we need to do more, we need to do better. I'm a partner rather than trying to come in as an adversary. I'm engaging folks as a partner with a very basic value-added premise that partners don't let partners fail. And so therefore, I'm going to ask the hard questions. I'm going to push the envelope, but I'm not pushing it to be disruptive. I'm pushing it because we're long overdue. And just a basic piece of facts and data. Last year in the state, we approached a record $2 billion in revenue, which suggests that we're long overdue, not only in social equity, but a serious conversation about trying to move towards a level playing field. Black Cannabis Equity Initiative started in 2019 as a pathway and a bridge to try to make sure that what was missing in the landscape was in fact engaged, dealt with authentically, and then start to have the hard conversations because it was necessary. Some people like the message and didn't like the messenger. Some folks like the messenger and didn't like the message. I don't give a damn. The point is that there's a basic premise here and that we all have to figure out how we can make this landscape much more equitable as we then engage not only Colorado, but the national cannabis industry landscape because there's a whole lot that needs to be done. And right now, in every state that's legal, we're in the weeds. In every state that's not legal, we're in the weeds. Every state that's contemplating legalization is in the weeds. So in essence, we're in the weeds. And how we get out of that has a lot to do with the collaborations, the relationships, the authenticity, and the fact that if you're going to be authentic in a social equity perspective, then you have to go through 3 steps. One is the awareness and recognition of the barriers. Secondarily is the ability to build capacity, i.e. where there's opportunity and access points. And then thirdly, be able to develop something that is more than just random acts of goodwill, but has some sustainability to it over the long haul. And so, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of where I'm coming from, who I am. I'm an ex-professional athlete. You know, I ran programs all over the country. I'm a former national director of Weed and Seed. If you know anything about Weed and Seed, it was the war on drugs. And so, you know, I'm a bush quail guy. I ran and, you know, community centers, recreation centers, help move communities forward in 26 cities around the country, dealing with community oriented policing, violent offenders removal, safe havens, and neighborhood rehabilitation and revitalization. Have some experiences. Peter Coors called Black folks some names several years ago. Coors asked me to come in and help them do their diversity affirmative action piece. I was able to help them do that. And so, you know, I have some expertise, I have some experiences, I have some background. I belong to the people of the state. I belong to my community. I'm not afraid. And so, having said that, I belong to you. And the reason I say that, I see Julie Richardson smiling. The reason I say that, I'll hit y'all with something that will take Eddie Dredd back a while. But if you deal with the fact that man, woman sort of evolved out of Olduvai Gorge 6 million years ago in the continent of Africa, that means that we're all brothers and sisters here. We just got lost somewhere in the shuffle. So I'm trying to just make sure that we reconnect and figure out how we go about doing what we're supposed to do in such a way that makes a difference, not just for Black folks, for white folks, but for human beings.
Well, let me tell you, if the camera was closer, you wouldn't just see smiles, but you'd see tears in my eyes. You know, I've worked a long time in rural Black communities, and if people want to really see disparity, you look there. There's no grocery stores. They're completely cut off, especially in South Louisiana where it's water too. You get in those communities and you don't know where to start. And I have people in those communities. And I've been working really hard on a lot of the things that you talked about. There was a time I was the director over the Veterans Association in my parish. And those boys, I literally wanted to run those military people out because those kids had two choices. They were going to jail or they were joining the military. And that started in junior high on up. These kids I saw them targeted. I spoke with those mothers, you know, and they think that's the only choice they have. And so the past few years working with Latino organizations, the company I worked for 2 years ago, they sponsored a Latino organization to go into the Latino community and in Spanish talk about cannabis as in medicinal and try to make it not so scary. And we've tried this in Asian communities and Black communities, and some of the pushback, and I get it, is the epigenetics of the years and years of being targeted and being accused, whether you were guilty or not, and the fear. So I'm in a place now where I'm trying to say to my friends and my family, come, it's safe now, when I'm not sure it really is.
What is safe? What is safe? Come.
As a person of color getting into the cannabis industry.
Oh, it's more than safe. It's more than safe. Not only is it safe, but it is an opportunity. And it's one of the ways
Right.
that we need to be looking at. We didn't get here overnight, so we're not going to level the playing field overnight. But what we can do is identify those access and awareness points where we can, in fact, engage in an authentic conversation that could be beneficial to all those who are interested in taking the journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I even have this in my family right now. My niece is married to a Black man, and they're wanting to get involved, and his family is attacking her, saying she's trying to get him put in jail. And that mindset, we have to change that.
But you got to understand why that is that way.
Oh, I understand.
I hope you do, but I'm not sure we all do. So it may be important to
what Great for Prisons, Profit Prisons do.
It may be important to reiterate that.
Yeah.
For example, you know, when one of the things that I've tried to do is to see where there's a hole in the communication to my community. Mm-hmm. And then how do we fill that hole or that gap so that what you just mentioned, which is unclear to some, all right, mm-hmm. becomes a little clear. And the way it becomes a little clear is that we have to go to where the Black community goes once a week or with some degree of regularity. And so that's the Black church. The mm-hmm. Black church, in fact, was an opponent to cannabis because one, the conversation with the Lord made the preacher think that in fact, the Lord was not for this and it was going to be a detrimental impact on our community. And so every 7 days, there was a conversation about drugs in the church. Mm-hmm. All right, now that conversation has changed because with expungement, you can now talk about how you can get men and women who have their lives tied up in cannabis low-level offenses to now get those records pardoned and expunged so that they can find housing, they can find a job. You know, in the midst of this COVID, that's going to be difficult, but nonetheless, the opportunity is there. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think that, let me just finish my point. I think that the Black church has played a significant role in that. And so with that, you have to be able to then go back to the church. You have to bring those ministers, you have to bring those community organizations, you have to share with them where the opportunity, but again, the same thing you take white folks through with awareness, capacity building, sustainability, you have to go back and do the same thing with the Black community who have been missing on the awareness, on the capacity building and the sustainability. So my point is, there is an opportunity here for us to get involved. The question is, do we have the will? And that is Black and white will for engagement that will then be beneficial to all who want to participate.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you feel about coming in with the Black churches? I kind of did the same thing, but we did CBD and we did the Black churches kind of at an angle of this is medicine. And this can help all the aches and pains but we use CBD products and we didn't go full force. And that's kind of preventing people from having to take pain medication and that sort of thing, perk their ears up a little bit. How do you feel about that approach?
Well, understand the politics of how cannabis became legal in those 34 states. They didn't come with recreation, they led with medical. And because they led with medical, then it made sense for folks who had historically been opponents to take a second look. And so when they took a second look, what they found out was that not necessarily for pain relief for folks like me and Lenny, but pain relief and medicine for folks who had serious schizophrenic and young folks who had other types of, I don't want to call them anything other than ailments that they were not able to come up with current medicine that could make an impact that seemed to be, when they took CBD, had an impact on being able to make sure that young people calmed down or that old people who were having real serious ailments in muscle joints, they were able to deal with that. Part of one of my sponsors for the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative is MedFarm. If you know anything about MedFarm, they're the only licensed research and development in the state of New Jersey, state of Colorado. So they're doing the types of stuff that allows us to see what's going on with the cannabinoids that will then allow us to understand the impact and effect that it has on the body and the brain.
Right, right. And, you know, it's interesting that you brought this up. There's several communities in South Louisiana that when there was a storm and everything flooded and people ate from that water, children played in that water. And then all of a sudden there is a landslide of children going to St. Jude's. There's more autism, there's more epilepsy. There's also a condition called Katrina syndrome where children will just randomly have seizures at any type of stress and then PTS from last storms. This caught a lot of attention as far as, you know, the government and paying attention to these inequalities. And being that you're talking about children needing that, I saw that on epic scales.
Okay. What about Lenny or Richard or Chris or Eddie or Thulam? Any questions, any thoughts?
Yeah, John, I'd like to ask this. You know, we're now 6 years into legalization here in Colorado.
Eight
2012.
plus.
Tell me what proactive steps are you taking right now? What are the actions right now? I know we're talking about finding that equilibrium, which takes time. But how do we get there? What are the first actions? What are we doing here in Colorado, or specifically here in Denver, that are ready to be best practices that can inform other communities and states as they follow in our footsteps?
That's a very good question, Chris. Nothing. What we are doing, right, is we're having lip service conversations, and we're trying to find our way out of no way, okay? And so what does that mean? Well, what my experience tells me that if you don't have the will, you don't have the commitment from an industry that is 85% white, that just became somewhat social equity conscious within the last 2 or 3 years, that had $2 billion in revenue last year. There's some holes and there's some gaps and there's many more questions than answers, right? But what you can do, first and foremost, is not get caught up in the politics of legalization. That's what has held a lot of folks up, because now everybody waits on the legislature to make a decision before it can do anything. And my position is you don't have to wait for legislation to do the right thing. For example, every license has a good neighbors agreement. That good neighbors agreement says that, well, it doesn't say it, but it insinuates that you should have your CEO and staff involved in community programs, that you ought to be donating to a community, whether it's products or in-kind service or, you know, contributions. So that's we need to start looking at that and start to see that that's really the value added, number one. Number two, I'm a firm believer, because of my history and background, in a report card. I feel that you have to have a report card because a will can't necessarily be measured unless you have some metrics from which to measure it with. And so to me, the report card then deals with, one, who's on your board that looks like me? Is there ownership opportunity for folks who look like me? Who's in your C-suite that looks like me? Where are you buying your products and services from ancillary businesses that look like me? Where's the media placement in media publications and outlets that looks like me? And then where's your contribution and partnerships with community organizations, i.e. like the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative? If you notice, there was no legislation there, just doing the right thing.
Right.
And so there are opportunities to do the right thing. And so let's go specifically to your question with some degree of specificity related to an ancillary business, right? We know that every company, every license needs security. There are Black security firms out here. We know that everybody is doing printing. There are 2 or 3 Black printing companies out here. So you don't have to wait for Med or Excise and License or the governor's office to say, do the right thing. If you're a good, solid business person and you learned anything from affirmative action, diversity, and inclusiveness in other states or best practices, or you've been doing your research, which has been a problem. You know, one of the reasons we don't know anything about each other is because we don't know anything about each other. We don't take the time to get to know anything about each other. And so the only time we do that is when the newspaper tell us that this Black person killed that Black person, or this white person killed that. Then we see some of that, but outside of that, we don't know. And so what happens is an old white lady walking down the street based on what she saw in the news last night crosses the street because she thinks that that Black person might be like the Black person that she saw in the news last night and may try to take her purse. We're misinforming. And the current situation used to be in the White House was about misinformation and, you know, misleading folks. And now we're trying to find our way again. And so back to your question, I'm sort of hoping that folks will have the will, folks will see that there's some things that they can do that don't have anything to do with legislation, and that they want to do that because it's the right thing to do. And you can do that right now. And I'm just not doing it with cannabis. I'm trying to convince corporate Colorado to do the same thing. We're looking at what's going on in the school system. The mayor's doing that in terms of social equity within every department within city government. The governor just passed something similar that's looking at every department within state government. So it's there. You can't run from it. And the Black community has become a tad bit more sophisticated in the sense that we're not going back to normalcy because normalcy wasn't fair then. So in essence, we got to bounce forward to a new degree of what is normal, and we have to define that. And we have to tell folks, if you want to help the Black community, let us tell you how you can help us. Don't come in trying to tell us how you can help us based on what you know about us, because you don't know. I'm a believer in what we call trust philanthropy. Not that you trust the philanthropic organization that you deal with, but it's a Mackenzie Scott premise. Mackenzie Scott, as you all know, is Jeff Bezos' wife, who gave away about $1.6 billion last year, unrestricted, to colleges and universities and community programs because there was a need. She told them, here's the money. Do what you think is right for your community because you know best how to serve your community. And I shouldn't be coming in trying to tell you how to do that because historically, when that happens, Black community organizations are tied into corporations who have control of their purse strings. And if they ever disagree with the direction that organization is going, then they pull the money back. And so we can't be authentic about how we engage. So I think, Chris, but I think that's some of the stuff that we could be looking at and that we could be doing right now.
Thank you.
One of the things that occurred to me while you were talking, very troubling actually, if people generally did what we would say is the right thing on some of these simpler right thing questions, that would solve the problem. It occurs to me that we actually have to teach them what the right thing is because it's not them choosing to not do the right thing. They don't see what's so obvious to us. They literally don't know what the right thing is. They've been miseducated, they've been misinformed, they've been he who shall not be named. But I think they don't know what the right thing is, so just doing it, which seems like such an obvious answer.
But that's why but see, I'm assuming that part of why I'm here tonight is not just for y'all to grow, but for all of us to grow. Because part of the give and take is you learn a little bit about me, I learn a little bit about NORML, I learn a little bit about the individuals who make up the board of NORML, who are committed to, marijuana reform, in our state and doing the right thing in our state. So we're spending too much time trying to be blacker and whiter and not enough time trying to be more human. Because once we start trying to be more human, then we can reach towards a higher level of understanding. We're still caught up in the conflict rather than moving beyond the conflict.
Amen.
Eddie Dredd, come on, Nettie Dredd. Come on, Nettie Dredd. I see you there, boy.
Now we're having trouble with his audio. Eddie, we can't hear you. There you are.
Turn your volume up, Eddie. I think it's the volume. It's there. You keep getting your volume together. I'm gonna go to Rich. What's up, Rich?
I appreciate your input and like you said, it's nice to hear what you think would be helpful from your side of the table if we want to look at it that way, rather than what I think I should do. So pretty much a fly on the wall, trying to learn stuff like this, and I do appreciate your help with that.
But I don't mind. But one thing about me, in my process of trying to be more human, you got to listen too. You can't assume that you know everything. And so I don't mind hearing what other people have to say about where they want to help in my community, because a lot of times folks come in with, this is where I want to help, and you'll say, well, no, you want to move over here because this is what I want you to help me do. And you'll find out that good people are very receptive to change and adjustment, but you got to lead them. Are you back, Eddie? No, you're mute. It's your mute, or it's your voice. It's come on, man. I want to hear what you got to say. I mean, you got your Bob Marley shirt on, and
Eddie, can you type a question in, and we'll.
Yeah, that's an option.
John, forgive me. Ashley had to step away. A quick little family concerns that came up. So as deputy director, I take over. I want to talk about expungement. We talked about that as an equalizer. It's also the inequity of the criminal justice system targeting Black and brown children in the war on drugs has now led us to a place where a large portion of our friends and neighbors are now excluded from an industry. And expungement is that first step, not just for cannabis, but to not check that box and go to work. So what's holding us up? We're leading the way. We're talking about it here in Colorado. We're starting this very slow, drawn out process. How we get there faster and clean up these records so that friends and neighbors can get to work?
Well, a couple things. Denver has a program called Turn Over a New Leaf. Last couple of years, when they tried to put the program in place, there are thousands, black and brown, and even whites who have been impacted by low-level marijuana offenses. But for some reason, the word has not got out as in-depth as it should, and they maybe had 100 folks altogether. So there's a need to communicate and get the word out for the expungement piece, number one. Number two, I'm gonna take you to Illinois for a minute. On January 1st, the governor of Illinois pardoned 11,500 folks. About 2 or 3 months ago here, Jared Polis had a press conference where he said he was going to pardon 2,700 plus. In each of those states, in each of those cases, it's going to take a few minutes. But the process of how to navigate, the process of getting the support system in place, the process of lawyers stepping up and doing pro bono, the process of city attorneys making themselves available at expungement clinics, the process of us engaging the community, the national and local community on the fact that this is not a one-legged stool, expungement. This stool has several legs. Expungement is just one of them, except that what happens is that folks thought that nobody was paying attention, and so they decided to try to make expungement the face of social equity. We said that no, it's not the face of social equity. It's just one leg in the 3 or 4-legged stool, along with access and opportunity and awareness and all of that. And so, again, it goes back to the well that you didn't dig. A lot of this was being pushed forward by young white kids who didn't have any background in social equity, and expungement looked like a way of being able to move the needle. But they hadn't done their research. They didn't know seriously any black folks. And what the industry had tried to do is go get a few social equity drug dealers who had down in luck, opportunities, and were able to get them in the industry and give them cultivation licenses or give them an opportunity to do a dispensary license and call that social equity. In essence, you can't, until all of us are free, no one person is free. And so you have to engage it so that, sure, give that person an opportunity, but then make sure that there are other opportunities. I'm a firm believer in don't feed me, teach me how to fish, I'll feed myself.
And then hold the door open. Don't sit there and kick it shut.
Well,
for the person behind you.
Understand this. No, they're not going, you can't close the door anymore, because the African-American and brown community are walking in with big league boots. So if you try to shut the door, we're gonna kick it down. What we'd like to do is say, hey, we're coming over, put a chair for us at the table, you know what I mean? And if we're gonna be there for a while, maybe you should ask us what we wanna drink or eat. Maybe you should ask us, do we want some entertainment? You know what I mean? Don't just have a party and say diversity, equity, inclusion. Then don't ask me what I think, what should be played, do I want to eat, and what would I like to eat? These are all engagement questions that go along with not only how can we all get along, but how can we all start to know much more about each other so that when we get along, you know what I mean, it's authentic.
Thank you.
Come on, Ashley. I know you got a question or two.
I've got a billion questions
Well,
for
then
you.
roll.
I guess I want to know how you feel about the delivery and the hospitality being a space for social equity to be included, and how that can be, I guess, a big step here.
Okay, well, as you know, the state and the city and several other municipalities have made social equity applicants a priority. In the city of Denver, it's going to be 6 years. All new applicants are going to be 6 years. I mean, new licenses are going to be social equity licenses. In Aurora, I mean, they've already dealt with social equity licenses and they've got one permit out already. In Boulder, they don't necessarily have social equity applicants, but they have delivery. And so several other municipalities have delivery. And so those, we'll come back to Denver, for example. Denver, delivery was legal in the state now for at least 2 years. But each municipality had to opt in its own. And so, you know, Boulder, some other towns opted in for medical delivery. Denver didn't. And now Denver is going towards next Tuesday towards council with some ordinance for delivery and for hospitality. And so what they want to do is to opt in on medical delivery and they want to opt in on recreational delivery at the same time. And so here's an opportunity for some folks to see where other folks did it differently. Denver did it this way, and they're going into delivery and the hospitality for medical and recreation at the same time. Now, what does that mean? It means that in other states, some folks have developed lawsuits against delivery. And then after, and trade associations in particular, and then after their folks backed away from the trade association, a member of the trade association brought the lawsuit. Other members of the trade association backed away because they felt that the lawsuit was going against social equity applicants. And in essence, what they wanted was those multi-state operators, MSOs, they felt that because they had been there a lot longer, that they should have some discretion and should be involved in the mix. Well, they went with that and then they had to back up. That's a message to almost every other state that if you're a trade association and you have a social equity legislation going forward, you might want to support that, because if you go against it, you're going to look out of step with the industry, not only locally, but nationally. And then you have all types of MSOs, you know, delivery types, be it Drizzly or Lantern, be it Ease, be it, you know, Green Solution, which is now Columbia Care, be it 1906, you know, in other states. I mean, everybody's talking about that. There's only one consumption lounge or hospitality lounge that I'm aware of that is illegal, yet is operational. And that is on State Street in Trenton, New Jersey, across from the City Hall, run by Weed Man. But it's a consumption lounge and not a dispensary, but he's selling weed out of there. And because he's gone to jail quite a bit, he's daring them to put him in jail. And now that they just legalized it Monday of this week, Murphy signed a bill, then the Attorney General told him, let everybody go, kick out all low-level offenses. And so it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen. Yet the 37 licenses there, 13 are going to go to the medicals who have been in the Cannabis Trade Association for at least 2 years. The other 24 are going to be available to social equity potential. And there have been folks who've been sitting and waiting with real estate for 4 or 5 years in New Jersey. In New Jersey, 70% of the revenue is going to go towards municipalities impacted by the war on drugs. But ironically, 30% of the money is going to go to law enforcement to be able to train their officers to deal with it. So there's a disconnect there that's going to be really looked at here. I mean, we don't have those same types of issues. If you want to go and be a social equity applicant and you have an opportunity and a background, you meet all the qualifications, you can apply. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to get there, because I'm a firm believer that if you have a background that is criminal related, or you have a background that doesn't give you the types of skills that will allow you to be successful, legal, managerial, accounting, then you're going to have somebody in your team that can do that. And to me, that's social equity piece then allows for partnerships, what I felt were always going to be the premise, except that you got to come to grips with the fact that those, well, for that 49%, that white partner or whoever that partner is, he's got to be able to bring something to the table, because the 51% is the Black social equity applicant. Yet there's an opportunity to commingle. There's an opportunity to teach and learn. There's an opportunity to mentor. There's a number of opportunities here. The question is, you know, is there going to be any roadblocks? Is there going to be a whole list of questions? Yeah, there are. I mean, take a look at what's going on. I'll just use the city as an example. Is it acceptable? Is it two ordinance acceptable to everybody? No. Is it a step in the right direction? Yes. Are there going to be some people not pleased? Yes. Are there going to be opportunities for some social equity applicants? Yes. So in essence, there are a lot of yeses here that are moving towards the positive, and that what we ought to be doing is trying to figure out how to work with those folks so they can be successful. Because if there's going to be a hold on all licenses except for social equity licenses, then it behooves us to try to make sure that those people are successful. Because if we don't, then we are setting them up for failure. And then it comes down to white folks sitting in the back talking about, I told you they couldn't do it. That's bullshit. You know what I mean? If you give us the opportunity, we can make it work. Because, and here's the premise, the Black market has been very, very, very lucrative. The Black market is one of the reasons that so many cannabis owner operators have a problem, because they feel that that impacts their bottom line. So in essence, you can't say, at least from my perspective, let's just only deal with social equity folks who qualify. What you might want to do is go deal with some of these guys who've been dealing in the illegal market, bring them into the legal market, pop them up and give them an opportunity. Because if you in fact can make millions of dollars illegally, what could you do legally?
That's a very good question.
What else you got? Come on, Ashley. I'm rolling right now. I mean, I'm a basketball player, so I got my jump shot. Come on, Eddie, if you're ready, come on, man.
All right, I want to know, when you said that it takes random acts of goodwill, it's going to take more than just random acts of goodwill. Now, do you mean that on a personal level with who you do business with, or do you mean on a local level with?
No, for example, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I can just tell you right away. There are some folks that think that, and this has been a historical piece. Folks have said, okay, I'm tired of hearing these Black folks, just give them some money and that'll be the end of it. A sporadic gesture of goodwill. Give them a little bit of paper, give them a little bit of money, and hope that they go away. That's not the deal. So the deal is, let me teach you why I'm not going away. Let me teach you why there are disparities. Let me teach you why you need to do better. Let me show you that if you got skeletons in your closet, how we can get those skeletons out of your closet and make you an authentic partner and not be afraid that you got skeletons in your closet. And so, you know, it all comes down to trust.
It never made sense to me to disqualify people from growing licenses who happen to have been growing for the last 25 years and know how to do it, and they're the ones that were disqualified if they'd ever been busted. I never understood that.
Well, you know, in New Jersey right now, one of the pieces that they're dealing with, Larry, is home grow, personal grow. You know, and because what happens is folks are concerned about the cost. And so if I can grow my own medicine, think about what we talked about earlier. If I can grow my own medicine, then I don't have to take away from the money that I would put on something else. You know what I mean? Because part of the disconnect is that folks who find themselves in low income situations sometimes have to decide between food, medicine, rent, all kind of stuff. And so you see, for example, Joe Biden just floated yesterday a policy that for everybody who has a child to put $1,400 for each kid. All right. There's a conversation nationally about from Curio Wellness. They're trying to make $30 million available for loans. There is a program in Denver at the state to try to do the same thing with a $5 million pot. And then there's a creative conversation going on in a place like Evanston, Illinois, where they're dealing with the whole conversation around reparations. And they're taking 3% of the tax revenue from cannabis and putting it in towards reparation that could then help housing, make a loan fund, a housing loan fund that'll make $25,000 available for African Americans who want to buy a house. So folks are getting creative in how they go about engaging the process. And so there is no one-stop shop. Are there multiple fixes? Yeah, but those fixes are really geared towards, one, the state that you're in, who's in politics, is there enough Black and brown folks there to be able to bring the social equity conversation forward so that it is very meaningful? I mean, again, many more questions than answers.
Yeah, on the home grow issue, when I first read the Constitution in Colorado, the state provisions, and I read the home grow issue, my reaction as a defense attorney of, at that time, 35 years or so, was with the home grow provision, to an extent, the rest of this stuff almost doesn't matter, because if and when the state screws it up so badly that I don't want to go to the store and buy what I want to buy as medicine or recreation, I'll learn to grow my own. And that to me was the fallback, the fail-safe. The ultimate power to the people was, when the government screws it up, we can grow it at home. So I think the money is one thing. That's only one way the government screw it up, though.
You know, about 10 years ago, I was home in Virginia visiting my dad, and he had a couple old Globe magazines. Y'all know what the Globe are, like the National Enquirer type deal, right? And one of the things that they were in there, they were dealing with predictions, right? And so one of the predictions was, in 15 years, folks will be able to go out in the backyard and just find weeds out there, and those weeds are going to be worth a whole lot of money. Now, they weren't talking about cannabis then, but that's exactly what they were talking about now. And so they predicted that weeds in the backyard are going to be worth unbelievable amounts of money. But no one went out there looking for weeds in the backyard because they didn't really know that that's what they were talking about. Now, if you had said George Washington was the #1 hemp seller in the United States, and that we're going to be dealing with hemp at a certain point, and that this is the money that we're going to use for a cash crop to make clothes, to make rope, to make all this different stuff. I mean, it'd have been a whole different conversation, man. But that's not the way it came. The way it came was the black codes and not telling, Juneteenth coming late. You know what I mean? All those types of things. I mean, so when you put it all together, you sort of come to grips with the fact that if we are not authentic with each other, either, as my wife would say, we're either going to perish together or we're going to coexist together to make it work.
Would you talk a little bit about the meetings that you put on and bring together leaders from all over the state, from the MED, CDPHE, Sean Coleman, who's running the expungement bill this year? Would you talk a little bit about the events that you put on?
Well, #1, get your pen and paper out, because we're doing one next Friday from 3 to 5. And what we're going to be dealing with is expungement, hospitality, and social equity and regulations. As you know, Yadira Cavallo has a bill to minimize any number of things. And for those of us, we feel that it's going to be a backtrack. And so, we'll see what happens. I haven't taken a position because I need to hear everything, but I know that once I start asking questions about her position or the bill's position on social equity, there may be a disconnect. But I don't want to jump the gun. I want to hear what she has to say. #1. Number two, there are a number of bills in the legislature. You know, Coleman has one that is not necessarily low-level marijuana offenses, but it's low-level offenses. Snyder has a bill. Leslie Harrod and Julie Gonzalez and them have a bill. Like I said, Valdez has a bill that's trying to move from 1 ounce to 2 ounces. So there's all kind of stuff there. The expungement piece that Sean is running, I mean, to me, it's just a piggyback on what happened last year. And so we'll see. You know, it's still early. I mean, they haven't even been back in session. Then they go back in session Monday?
They went back on the 16th.
Yeah,
And
okay. Well, but they went back, but didn't they take 2 weeks off or something?
And they're back again. They are back in session.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, they're just still trying to find their way, and hopefully they will. And I believe that I believe in Julie, I believe in Leslie, I believe in Coleman, I believe in Mark Snyder. You know, I believe that the people who are proponents are in fact realize that it is in the best interest of the state to deal with the fact that while we don't want to acknowledge it, the cannabis industry in every state is a profit center.
absolutely. Does Ty, do you have anything to add about being a dispensary owner and dealing with social equity or anything on that?
Stop smiling, Ty Lamb. Come on, girl.
Yeah. So I agree with you. There's definitely opportunity and there's definitely hardship being a Black minority like myself. You are looked with a different set of eyes, definitely. Coming in here in 2009, as you can see, my name is Twee Lamb. They didn't recognize me as a Black person. And when I see them or they call me sir, looking around me, looking for an Asian person. They don't see a Black person in them. And there's always an apology. But then when they see that it's a lamb, what gang related organization am I involved with? There's always judgment. So, and it comes with hard work and always having to prove yourself that you're not that person.
But that's you know, that's okay. I come from the school of thought. I was raised with you have to be twice as good as that person. So I don't have a problem with trying hard. I'm just not trying to be better than anyone else. I'm just trying to be the best me I can. But you know, you have to have a sense of where you are so that you can have the opportunity to be the best you. And part of what happens is too many of us just don't have a sense of who we are, where we're at. I mean, very few of us know why we're here, you know, better yet, who we are, why we're here, what we're going to do, and when we're going to do it. Very few people have a sense of that. So I appreciate you saying those things, but you got more. I'm seeing you in the background hiding. You got more. Come on, girl. Just don't be all teeth on this thing. Come on now.
Well, there is a fear. I am a Black person. I'm the first Black person that I know of beside the other lady that been in this industry, and I'm afraid to be known. I want to be in the background because I'm afraid of losing my business because I have lost numerous shops and MIP and going to court, and they pretty much flat out say that you're Asian or you're Black.
Where you at? Where are you located?
I'm in Denver.
And
I'm in Santa Fe.
all right. So first of all, you know Wanda's here, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you know Wanda's here. You know that Sarah's here. All right. You know, but I'm not sure that they're social equity people. I think that there are social expansion people. All right. There's a difference between social equity and social expansion. You can be Black and not be social equity. You could have never had any background in the war on drugs. You could just be Black and want to get into the market. And I think that that's fair because that's what the white guys did. Some of them had no bruises on them and they were able to get into the market. And so I think anybody who wants to get into the market should be able to do that. but I don't think you ought to be afraid. You know, in fact, as a matter of fact, you're the type of person that we want to lift up because you're the type of person that says, or that exemplifies, that demonstrates this is what hard work does. And if you're a minority in the business, and by the way, we're only a minority in the United States. In the world population, white folks are the minority, all right? People of color are in fact the indigenous population in the world. But I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with that. That just makes some white folks mad. You know what I'm saying? What I want to do is talk about how we take those Black entrepreneurs and lift them up, how we take those Black entrepreneurs and build them. Because if the industry is authentic, they're looking for folks like you as an example of success. Maybe not social equity success, but minority success, Black success, social expansion success, opportunity success. And so if I were you, I wouldn't hide. I'd be stepping forward, trying to let folks know that I, Thai Lam, is a success story in the Denver, Colorado cannabis market. And, you know, I'm a woman success story. I'm a woman success story. See, if you're not authentic, and I've got into Wanda's ass and I've got into Sarah's ass because I told them that y'all have not been authentic. A lot of Black folks get in the industry and they start talking about social equity, and then they get in there and they see opportunity and they forget why they came. All right. And so, but that's just human nature. That's just not Black folks. That's just human nature. But if you want to have a social equity conversation and you come in from that, then, you know, I'm gonna get into it from a perspective of there's a difference between expansion and social equity. And so I'm gonna have to come at it from that angle. I saw a question here. Myths and rumors must be cleared. More knowledge, more information, education, better decision concerning well, all of that, Eddie. But part of what happens is that, you know, the industry, not everybody, but I mentioned when we first started this conversation about the message and the messenger, all right? A lot of folks can't deal with a strong Black man. They can't deal with an intelligent Black man. As a matter of fact, if you ever watch The Wire, Brother Mouzon said the most feared Black man in America is a brother with a library card. Guy who can read, all right? Because if you can read, you got a sense and a better sense of where you are. And so part of what's here is that folks would rather deal with someone with less knowledge about the industry because that person can be manipulated easier than someone who's strong, clear about their position, clear about what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and steadfast in terms of their value added to the industry. And so folks would rather deal with the young and dumb rather than the demonstrated, the experienced, more qualified and committed person who can in fact challenge some of the decisions that are being made realistically with background and experience. There are a lot of folks out here have no background and experience. And so if you act like you know what's going on, if you act like you're approximately correct, when we know that none of this stuff is finite, we're all dealing with approximations and speculations. But we're all trying to act like we know exactly what's going on. And what we found out is that in a number of things that have happened in the last year, just in the last 2 months, the Constitution is being attacked. I mean, so that says that we're not clear. And I'll make 2 quick points and then I'll take another question. Look at what happened with Mandela in South Africa. The whites and the Blacks there decided that if they were ever going to make it work, and they're still struggling with it, that they couldn't hold each other, that they had to hold each other accountable for how they got to where they got to, all right? And so what they did was they sat down and went through truth and reconciliation. I confronted white folks about what I didn't like about them. White folks, Afrikaners, confronted Black folks about what they didn't like. Well, if you deal with slavery, we just freed the slave and let them loose with no support, no money, no food, no clothes, just let them loose into society. And they had to fend for themselves with no conversation. That's why you're getting Black Lives Matter. That's why you're getting 400 years. That's why you're getting on this hat 1619 to 2019. That's why you're getting the types of things that are coming forward in terms of recreations and social equity. People are just not going to go for buttered biscuits and chicken bones any longer. So Ty, I'm with you, girl. And what's that in the background you got there? You got product?
Yes, I got product. I'm running the shop all by myself today and attending this meeting. It's a one-woman show right now.
Yeah, other questions. Y'all got me for a few more minutes.
Anybody have any other questions?
Local public service announcements are great info sites to help people with putting the first. Well, Eddie, I'm not sure. See, you're not going to get local public service announcements from TV. You may get it from radio. You definitely will get it from Westword, because Westword is the cannabis publication. Okay, but outside of that, I'm not sure where you get it, because outside of what the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative is doing and pulling our Zooms together once a month, I'm not sure anybody else is doing that. And so that's a platform for everybody to come together and hear. Next week, not only are we talking about updates from Colorado Med, from Denver Excise and License, but we're going to deal with, again, the Med Farm piece, what's going on in the research, medical research. But just as important, we're going to get two positions on legislation. One from the legislators, who are in fact writing the bill or sponsoring or pushing forward the bill, and also industry leaders who want to talk about how that legislation adversely or positively impacts them. See, the difference is y'all are talking to someone who is well-versed and knowledgeable about aspects of the industry. Not all the weeds, because there's too many damn weeds to try to sit out there and mess around with every weed. But there are some specific hot topics that will guide the industry, whether it's social equity, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's legal lens or accounting lens, fiscal lens. There are some things out there, and we need to be on top of those things. But I don't need to be well-versed. I just need to have relationships and collaboration with other folks who are thought experts in those areas, and then be able to bring those folks together to help draw the tapestry or the bigger picture so we can all have a sense of where we are. Anybody else got something for me? Well, then I'm gonna get out of y'all's hair.
Well, I just have to say that as a consumers organization, we took our statement. We plan to support and work with the local authorities on a local level on how we can support social equity. That was our statement, and we're learning, and I'm so glad that you're here to teach us on things that we don't know and things that we need to learn and educate our members on and be a part of. So I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be a sponsor for the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative, and also just to have you here to speak to every one of our board members and everybody who views this.
Okay, so Lenny, Di, and Rich, and Julie, and Chris, and Ashley, and even my good friend Eddie Dredd. Even though we didn't get a chance, boy, to talk the skunk conversation down from the islands, I want to let you know that I appreciate seeing you there, boy. I appreciate seeing you there. And the next time I talk to Billet Bob, I'll tell him that I ran into Eddie here on the planet. Bullet Bob is Bob Marley, y'all. So, and as a matter of fact, Eddie, just so that you know, I've been connecting with Lightshade and Ziggy, who Ziggy is doing a cannabis dispensary in Montclair, New Jersey.
I went to high school next to Montclair, and Ziggy
Where?
borrowed the guitar that I did the opening to
High
the
school?
show on. Livingston.
See, I'm from Princeton, man.
Up the road.
Yeah, I'm from Princeton. And so
Born in New Jersey as well.
where, Chris?
Was born up in Englewood.
Yeah, look at, come on, all this new, and see, if you ask Jordan Wellington, who's out at VS Strategy, he's from New Jersey.
He is, yes.
You talk to Barzum from 1906, he's from New Jersey.
All the best people.
Yeah, man, I mean, we're Garden Staters. Sorry,
All got out.
sorry, Julie, we're not from down in LA, Lower Alabama. That's what we call Louisiana, Lower Alabama. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all, and thank you very much. Ashley, thank you for the invitation. Hopefully, if y'all not available, if you're available, join us next week. I will send her all of the information. I really appreciate y'all. Good luck with all of the work that you're doing, and anywhere I could ever be of some help, please don't hesitate to call on me.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mon.
Thank you.